Hey, everybody. Welcome to Road to CEO. My guest today is Mike Snavely, the CEO of Funware, based in Austin, Texas, which he's run for the last year. We're going to learn all about Funware today. Mike, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Well, thanks for the invitation to join.
So, why don't we start at the beginning? What is Funware? What kind of a company is it?
Well, Funware is, it's funny. I kind of call it a 15-year-old startup. Here's what I mean by that. Um, I'll answer your question directly, which is we're a mobile application platform company that focuses on hospitality and healthcare. And it's really about being a digital companion to some of the most important experiences in your life, whether that's a once in a lifetime visit to a luxury resort or the need to go to the hospital to receive, treatment. And our core technologies are really about wayfinding and helping people find their way around a resort to make sure they maximize the experience or find their way within the healthcare context so they can get to their appointment on time, receive the care they need. But the company's gone through a number of evolutions over the last 15 years. Founded in 2009 by a couple of guys that came out of Cisco and really very focused on the use of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth technologies to support wayfinding in the mobile context. And a big part of what the company did in the early days was really agency-like. Um, we built some of the flagship apps for Fox, for NBC, for the CW, a lot of entertainment types of accounts, WWE. We had the flagship app for the Cowboy Stadium. We had some airport apps at DFW and Miami and so on. So there were a lot of kind of agency-like engagements that represented some of these organizations' first entries into mobile. So we built some of the foundational mobile properties for some of those major brands back in the day. I actually was at Funware from 14 to 16.
Hmm.
And at the time, I was running the software business, really kind of driving a lot of the activities. I think at the time I had, 45 or 50 people in sales and marketing, solution engineering, stuff like that. We were really kind of on a pretty strong growth trajectory. I went to join, kind of a Silicon Valley startup, and then ultimately found my way back through a series of interesting discussions, let's say, which resulted in my becoming CEO, and for the first time, I might add. So I'm a first-time CEO
Very
here at
interesting.
Funware.
So did
Yep.
you stay in touch with the board or with other executives there, and they were like, "We need this guy to come back"?
Yeah, I'll tell you. The next level down of the story. So the founding CEO left in 2022. And then a guy that I had worked with early in my career, in mobile app development. I guess it wasn't really early in my career; it was more mid of my career. Um, he ran. We ran together a company called Mutual Mobile. Mutual Mobile actually grew to 350 engineers globally, and we got sold to WPP and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I ran sales, and he ran delivery. A fellow by the name of Russ. And so I had gone off, did a Silicon Valley startup thing. I had done a couple of other things in the agency space. I was working in an AI startup. And Russ called me up one day and said, "Hey, Mike, they want me to be the CEO of Funware. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, um, sounds like they want you to go do it. So, good for you." And he said, "If I go and do this job, will you come and be my CRO?" And I said, I'm kind of happy doing what I'm doing right now, but let's stay in touch. So he takes the CEO job, makes some changes around the company. And, 6 or 8 months later, he calls me up again and says, "Okay, I think I'm ready for you. Would you like to come and be my CRO?" And long story short, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I came back to Funware and started to organize the sales team. Well, oddly enough, 30 days or so into my tenure, the board decided that they needed somebody sales oriented at the helm. And so they asked me to become the CEO in Russ's stead. And I just asked him, "Look, bud," I consider him a personal friend. I'm like, "Look, do you Are you going to have a problem with this? He's like, no, I think you're actually the right guy for the job at this time. Because fundamentally, the issue with the company was selling.
Mhm.
Really kind of getting the sales organization into gear and driving the top line of revenue, and then you can sell your way out of a lot of problems.
Yeah, you sure can. That's very true. So then did he depart the company and
Yeah,
then
Russ left. I mean, he consulted with us for a period of time, but the board, really kind of like firmly got behind me and said, Mike, it's your opportunity to really go and shine. The funny thing is that you know the company at the time was having some, let's say, financial challenges, and the likelihood that they could have gotten a seasoned CEO into the company at the time was probably not very high. And I was listening to some of your back catalog, and one of the fellows you interviewed maybe a year ago made the point of, look, I got my first CEO job because nobody more experienced would take it. And I think there's something to be said for that in my particular case. And I think that I had spent a career kind of gathering and building the skills and the abilities to do the job, but I just never done the job. So this was really kind of like a battlefield promotion in a way.
Mhm.
But I think that the exec team and I have done pretty well in the 6 months or so since all this went down. We're in a much better financial position. We've eliminated our debt. We're starting to see the beginnings of sales traction, and we're actually looking at M&A at this point, so that we can continue to aggregate not only revenue but customers and then technology solutions. So it's been a heck of a year so far for sure.
Very cool. It's interesting. One of the people I've interviewed in the past is a guy named Todd Gibby from Lock 8, which is a kind of a private equity firm, and they love hiring first-time CEOs. That's actually a part of their model is to hire first-time CEOs, and I think there's a lot of good reasons to do that. You are able to provide more of a formula. You're able to really train people. You're able to know kind of what sort of pre-existing notions they might be bringing with them because they're a little more of a blank slate. So I know that they've really been happy with that model.
Yeah, terrific.
So okay, so tell me, you what exactly did you do for the WWE? I want to latch on to that one. I think that was before you were CEO, maybe in the early years of Funware, you said.
Yeah, this was back. So there was a really real crescendo in media and entertainment for Funware back in the that sort of 2014, 15, 16 time frame.
Mhm.
WWE was actually a participant in one of the company's funding rounds. And as part of that, we built a flagship app for WWE. And this was it was really designed for kind of fan engagement. It was designed to help really kind of personify some of the characters. And then it had components that kind of supported the live experience as well. And as part of that, and it was a lot of fun because I was running the software business at the time. I got to go to a couple of WrestleManias, which was pretty great.
Yeah.
That's quite a show, and I got to tell you, I wouldn't consider myself a wrestling fan per se, but it's a heck of a cultural experience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
People
I
really get into it.
I agree. I'm not much of a wrestling fan. I do like the UFC, which the WWE just
Oh,
purchased.
sure. Hmm.
But I would go just for the cultural experience of it all. I think
Yeah,
it seems fascinating from the outside.
yeah, sure enough.
Yeah. Yeah, they even have a concept which is kind of interesting. I don't remember the word they use, but it's a word that means not breaking character ever. And so you get these
Kayfabe,
what was it called?
Kayfabe, Kayfabe. I
Yes.
might be pronouncing it wrong. But
Yes.
yeah, it really is about kind of allowing yourself to get drawn into the experience in a way that you become a like it's like you're in a cartoon experience in a way,
Yeah.
but
It's
you're not breaking
interesting.
that character.
It's really fascinating. And without getting into specifics, I will say I feel like some of that has entered our politics at this point. So,
Yeah,
do with
I
that
know
what you
this isn't a
will.
political podcast, and
It's
I'm
not.
probably not going to talk about politics on it, but I wouldn't disagree with what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. I think we could learn something about our politics by studying the WWE a little bit. I think at some point, college professors, I think, are going to be doing that.
Now
Um,
I got to tell you, so I could see a
yeah,
real fusion model where politicians in a cage.
I would get
I
behind
would
that.
pay good money to see that.
I would too. That's the next money-making venture. Okay, so you also mentioned that you were involved with a company that was sold to WPP. Can you just remind me what company was that?
Yeah, it was a company called Mutual
Okay.
Mobile, and I'll tell you a little bit of the story. This is part of my journey to kind of gathering the skills to become a CEO, and so I'll kind of give you a little bit of a highlight of where I think I picked up those skills along the way. But then I want to make a point about walking through an open door, and what I mean by that is this. So long time ago, I was a lawyer. I left the law to do a job that I was entirely unqualified to do, which was marketing insurance for a $2 billion insurance company out of Indianapolis. Wound up running field marketing for one of their subsidiaries, then got into technology first, offline marketing. So think of mail, then into social marketing, then into mobile. And so the way that I got involved with these guys in mobile was I was in Austin. I was doing like a venture back startup kind of job, running the retail portfolio for a company called Bizarre Voice, which ultimately went public, and it was ratings and reviews, excuse me, on e-commerce websites typically. And so I went to a technology mixer, which was like kind of a happy hour at a local bar in Austin, and I was just kind of hanging out, minding my own business, and meeting people. And I met a couple of young guys. I think they were 25 or so at the time. And, hey, what do you do? Well, we have a mobile application development company. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, how big are you? Well, we're at $12 million now. We really don't know what to do next. So I said, I might be able to help. And so, long story short, I came and joined Mutual Mobile. We had 12 million the first year. We grew it to 40. And then WPP took, I think they took a 25 or 30% interest in the company.
Mhm.
And it was really just about, capitalizing on the first wave of mobile, where big brands were willing to spend lots and lots of money to establish a mobile presence and then a mobile
Mhm.
audience. And we facilitated that work. And it was very much an agency, work for hire kind of model, but it was very much in kind of, it was one of the early acquisitions, I believe, that WPP made into
Mhm.
mobile in particular, distinct from digital. And so that was, those were really interesting days.
Interesting. So, yeah, I've followed Martin Sorrell, the founder and CEO of WPP, for a
Mhm.
while. He's supposed to be coming on the podcast at some point. We'll see if he ever
No kidding.
does. Um,
That'd be a big get.
it would be. I'm curious though. So that sounds like a good sized company, 40 million, a lot of engineers. When you're selling, he's bought so many companies that I'm just curious. What did he get involved? Was he that? Was he in? Or is that big enough for him to be personally, showing up
I
and
think he made an appearance, but frankly, I was not. I wasn't really a critical part of the deal team
Mhm.
for that particular transaction. I was really more focused on generating the revenue from customers that would justify the valuation, et cetera. So I can't really speak to the details of that acquisition.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I imagine that I don't know exactly how many acquisitions he's made, but he's obviously famous for growing
Lots, yeah,
WPP. I mean,
yep.
that was his whole, he decided early on he didn't want to grow organically. He said you couldn't build a truly worldwide brand organically in a professional services sense. You could only do it through acquisition. And, it's just amazing to me how he was able to leverage so much to acquire companies that were bigger than him. And I don't know what the
Hmm.
biggest acquisitions he's made are, but I'm sure that they were over a billion. And so I was just curious if he showed up. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was. So if he showed his face at the end or at some point, I think I feel like that's the kind of thing he would show up for, maybe.
Yeah, it was certainly a leading technology, and we had an enormous amount of momentum
Yeah.
for sure at the time.
So I to turn back to Funware. I've seen Funware described as a blockchain company, and I don't think that's how you describe yourself, but why would people ever refer to it that way?
Let me kind of describe what I guess I'll describe my MO, which is to keep things simple. And what I mean by that is that I don't have room in my brain for a super complicated playbook. I know how to sell software. I know how to scale software businesses. I know what the valuation we should expect is from properly run scaling software business. I know how to turn it to profitability, and do all the above. And been able to do that successfully throughout my career. Funware, back in the day when I was running the software business, we had, I think, $25 million in recurring revenue on the software side. And today, and we just reported results for 23, we've got four and a half. And there was a lot of distraction from the software business that occurred because the company was trying to build out and a digital assets offering built on the blockchain.
Mm,
And it actually developed a thing called Funcoin, a thing called Fun Token, and a
mm,
thing called Fun Wallet, all of which are essentially technologies that are sitting on the shelf now
I
and
see.
are available for us to deploy into the business if and as we find a good use case for it. But it's really not the core of our focus today. The core of our focus today is to really stabilize and start to grow the software business, um, and kind of get moving in that direction. Now, I do believe there's an intersection between our building software for large hospitality organizations. We've got a number of Marriott properties under management. We've got our first deal with Hyatt. We've got a number of independents. So think about the intersection between those people and their guest experience on property and the loyalty program. So you can imagine a case where instead of earning Marriott Bonvoy points for a stay at a Marriott property, maybe you earn Funcoin. And Funcoin is a fungible loyalty currency where you can essentially put it on an exchange, stake it and deliver and receive value from it, or potentially use it to buy something that isn't another Marriott room. Now, we're a long distance between here and being able to
Mm,
activate on that. But the good news is that we do have all of the underpinnings of that ready and available. And we have a significant referenceable relationship with Marriott and others.
mm,
So it'll be interesting to see where this unfolds. But the our ability, I think, to drive real shareholder value from the digital asset strategy is going to be tied directly to the aggregate size of our audience, meaning that a few hundred thousand or tens of or few hundreds of thousands or millions is less interesting than tens of millions or hundreds of
mhm,
millions. And so, to the extent we can start to reach that many devices with our
mhm.
existing portfolio, kind of like the one we had before, that's going to be critical to this to activating any kind of a crypto digital asset strategy.
Very interesting. Okay, that explains that. Was seeing some references, and I think business is all about exploring new opportunities, and sometimes you have to pull back on something you've invested in, and sounds like that might have been the case with some of the blockchain development.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just out of curiosity, you talk about mobile applications and wayfinding. Have privacy laws affected anything that you've done with mobile application development? Rules governing what personal data is shared with you or within your application. Is that something that's touched on your software at all?
Yeah, sure enough. So we're careful not to take PII, personally identifiable information. And so that the platform companies have done a good job of establishing essentially an advertising framework. When I say the platform companies, I mean Apple and Google.
Yeah.
And they've done a good job of essentially anonymizing the personally identifiable information of you or me or anybody else using one of their devices behind an advertising ID. So we get the advertising ID from the platform, and then we're ultimately bound to the permissions that are granted at the operating system level. So, do you want to share location? Do you want to allow push notifications? Do you want to share your advertising ID at all? And so we then consume that advertising ID and that set of permissions, and then we essentially have an anonymized profile of the consumer in our cloud infrastructure that allows us to understand what their behavior is over time.
Mm,
Um, Now, I think that in the fullness of time, we're going to find a way to start to create first party data on the consumer
mm,
one way or the other. And we're going to do that in reference to all, in obedience, I should say, to all, relevant privacy laws, et cetera. But I
mhm.
think that first party data set is going to become pretty valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that we can deliver real value in exchange for that. And that, frankly, was part of the genesis of the digital assets ecosystem,
Mm,
Funcoin, Fun Token, Fun
mhm.
Wallet, where
Yeah.
the idea was that a consumer could exchange their personal data for value. And that value would be measured in something like Funcoin or Fun Token in such a way as to allow them to monetize their the grant of access to that data. I still think there's a play in there somewhere. Once again, I think
Mhm.
it has to do with how we can aggregate an audience size that makes that a meaningful asset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So for me, I'm in the advertising business, and so I will set up landing pages, for instance, and each one may have a different type of PII in there, personally identifiable information,
Mhm.
and then each one will be stored in a different way, each one will be protected in a different way. And so it's really complicated. And now for the first time as you're describing this, it actually sounds like when you're doing a mobile application, there's a simpler kind of challenge because you can, in some ways, you can control the PII that you get through the platforms in maybe a more sort of standardized way, it
Yep,
sounds.
we can actually stay behind a firewall,
Yeah,
a privacy firewall in a
interesting.
way is what we do. Now, there's also another play here, I think, which is we could partner with, a publisher like you. And we could say, look, you're trying to build a first party data set that people are interested in your content.
Yeah.
Or, there's a company out of Canada that essentially is having people upload snapshots of their grocery store receipts so they can understand things about the basket, right? Um, in exchange for loyalty points. So you can imagine doing some kind of a partnership where the currency that's being awarded is not some kind of a non-fungible, like non-tradable loyalty currency that only works over here, but rather something that could be traded as a coin on the various coin exchanges. And there's value in that idea, and it's probably about identifying the right level, the right set of partners to amass that big enough audience to make it worthwhile.
Very interesting. Okay, so change topic slightly. What about AI? I've noticed that you may have built in AI at some point, kind of early on, even to the Funware software universe. Is AI a part of your strategy, your product strategy right now?
Yeah, sure enough. So we've got AI running in the platform. Um, it, there are really two components to our AI strategy. One is generative AI
Mhm.
that allows us to help support people's creation of assets that live in the app. So let's imagine that you're the general manager of, some swank property in Hawaii, and you've got better things to do than to write copy that describes your spa experience. Well, I've got generative AI in the platform, in the administrative portion of the platform, that will essentially assist you in writing that, right?
I see.
So that's one component of it. And we can also generate images and that sort of thing. The other component of it, and really this is where our long-term vision for providing value to just the general manager of such a property is to turn our platform and the mobile app that's built on our platform into a digital concierge that lives in your pocket.
Mm,
So these luxury properties are expected to provide a high level of service. That's why they're luxury properties, right? That's why they get $1,000 or $2,000 a night as opposed to $300 a night.
mhm.
And so a big part of the way they've done that historically is via a personal touch, right? The concierge desk, the the
Hmm.
recognition of the individual and the personal greeting and all that kind of stuff, right? Anticipating the needs, doing the nice little touches. Well, some of these properties, believe it or not, are staff limited, meaning they could sell more rooms. They don't have the staff to service them. So, how can we take on some of the guest experience digitally in such a way as to be able to give the general manager staffing scale leverage? So now I've got great. I can't hire three more concierges, not because I can't afford them, but because I can't find them. But what I can do is I can deploy the equivalent of a concierge salary into this digital companion. And then inside of that, we're in the process of building out AI generated triggers that help to better understand who the guest is and map that up to offers that might be attractive to the guest in such a way as to not only drive that kind of digital interaction with the property, but also help them transact and spend more money. And so that's a play that we're running with a couple of industry experts that they're helping kind of advise us, and then in partnership with a couple of general managers of major resort properties to help us sort of tune the knobs to really get that all right. But
Hmm.
in the fullness of time, I think we're going to have a very interesting offering that's going to replace hard to find people with
Yeah.
robots.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's a brave new world. I mean, I think it adds a ton of value to be able, and I've seen this in my business as well. There are AI tools that help us with headlines and help us with, topics and keywords and all the stuff that you
Mhm.
need for digital advertising. There are some gaps with it. It isn't phenomenal in all ways yet, but I agree with you that in the
True.
fullness of time, I mean, it's essentially in its infancy right now, and it's
Yep.
pretty impressive to be in its infancy. So you can only
Sure.
imagine it's going to get exponentially better.
That's right. And what I'll say is that it took 20 years for cloud computing to really kind of get to the
Yeah.
point where you can open up an environment, remotely and kind of in a couple of hours. AI has gotten there very, very quickly, in really a year and a half or so. So it's you're right, it is a brave new world.
Yeah.
And we've got people working every day to figure out how to maximize the value of that to our customers.
So the other thing I like to talk about with AI whenever I've got a CEO on the line is I like to ask if what you're using it for personally. And when I say personally, I mean in your business life and your personal life, if you care to share that as well. And I'll go first. I really am using AI mostly in my professional life for things like summaries. So I'll take a transcript of an important
Yep.
discussion or a big meeting, and I'll feed AI the transcript through an AI platform, usually Chat GPT, and I'll get back bullet points and summaries, that sort of thing. I'll also use it a lot for training. So we'll do if I'm going to do a big digital Google Analytics training, I will often you get an outline of the training topics,
Yep.
and then I'll go in and I'll fill it in myself, or a team member will fill it in, and we'll kind of build from there. But I mean, it's a tremendous time saver when it comes to summaries and kind of curriculums. And I would say those are the main areas where I mean, I tested out for other things. So I'm not necessarily limiting it just to that, but consistently ever since ChatGPT at least became available, those are the two things that I started doing that pretty early. I continue doing that now. Everything else I've been kind of dipping in and out, and the value in for me professionally has been a little bit, but in those two areas it's been fantastic. What have you found for yourself with AI?
I use it for those kinds of use cases as well. I mean, and I got to tell you, like when you're looking at video content or the transcription of an audio conversation, it's impossible to consume it unless you summarize it in some way.
Yeah.
And so AI is absolutely a lifesaver there. One of the ways that we're using it at the company is that we've built a couple of GPTs of our own. So you can inside Chat GPT, you can create a GPT. I think it's called a Team GPT or something like that, and you can feed it content and train it. And
Yeah.
so, for example, we've got a hospitality team, of course, because we're focused on that market. And I've got a whole bunch of assets that I've collected, that I and others, frankly, have collected from around the internet, from industry publications, et cetera.
Hmm.
Things like facts and figures or statistics or descriptions of trending. And so the GPT has been trained on all of that. And now I can use that as a starting point to write an interesting blog post, for example, or to create content that goes into a sales deck, let's say. So, yeah, I would encourage people not to miss out on this idea of teaming around AI as a facilitator.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. A great point. And I'm sure that this is just the beginning, as we already said. I think we'll probably, as we go. I mean, the reason I like asking about this is because I learn so often about new ways to use it. And so you mentioned what was the word you used? It's not it's kind of like a private GPT that you have internally.
Yeah, I don't remember the specific name, but if it's in OpenAI, I
Yeah.
think it's called a Team GPT or
Yes,
something
that's
like
it.
that.
Yes.
It's on the left when you go. It's on the left panel, and you can describe it and implement it and train it there.
Yeah, that's on my list to work with. As I understand it, using a team GPT will essentially allow you to not have your information get uploaded to the rest of the
Right.
LLM.
Yep.
So you kind of keep your data private. You're able to then, use the power of Chat GPT, but only on the data that you provide. And that I've from some other CEOs I've talked to has been tremendously valuable. I've not personally used that myself, but I think that's one of the next things I'd like to address.
Yeah, sure enough, and it's smart on their part to do that because now you're selling
Mhm.
team licenses, right?
Yeah.
So now you're going to sell a license to everybody
Yeah.
for the service. Yep.
It's going to be a very valuable company, I think. And
Yeah,
I
no
think
kidding.
it's
There are some
already,
limitations, but
yeah.
they've done a really good job continuing to sort of increase the level of service you get for your subscription fee.
Hmm. So I'd love to ask a couple of maybe specific questions to your management style as CEO. And I love that you're a first-time CEO, and so I would imagine some of this might be kind of fresh in your mind a little more, perhaps, or maybe not. So how many people do you have a number of people that you want to report to you? How many people report to you at one time?
I've got four right now, and that's I could take on one more, but I really
Mhm.
don't want to take on any more than that.
Yeah,
And I really my philosophy is to hire people that are better than me
it's a
at
good
all of their
philosophy.
functions,
Yeah,
right?
a great
My
philosophy.
CFO is a hell of a lot better than I am at finance. My chief legal guy is a hell of a lot better than I am at law. My general manager is a hell of a lot better than I am at selling. And that's kind of the way we run it. So I think that it's important to develop deep relationships with a small number of people and find the people you can trust to go run those functions, because my number one job is selling the company, you know what I mean, and I'm not like saying that, hey, it's for sale to the highest bidder, though everything's for sale, just a matter of what price. It's really about helping people understand what our vision is and where we're going and why we're a good long-term bet, all the rest of it, and then developing the evidence that what I'm saying is true. And so I look at the CEO job as really, in a way, the chief sales job in the
Mhm.
company. And the strategy whereby we develop it and deliver against a defensible story, and then the culture that we build against the way we're going to go and achieve those outcomes is really where I spend the lion's share of my time.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I have three direct reports, and I think I could probably go up by two as well. I think that's about right. But I think the fewer the better in a lot of ways. I think having,
Yep.
and I agree, hiring people who are better than you is the way to go. I've always thought that you make yourself look like a good manager by hiring people who do not need much management at all.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you win twice when somebody you give a lot of confidence and authority to delivers, right? You win with them and you win for the company, and that's really what I strive
Yeah.
to achieve.
So you mentioned that you think one of the top roles of CEO is to be selling the company, whether that means promoting it or actually selling it or kind of getting it in that position. Um, is there a metric that you look at for measuring your own success? Like, is there like one metric above others that you kind of try to focus on?
I mean, we're publicly traded, so market cap's a pretty clear indicator of what the market thinks we're worth. It's the present value of our future cash flows. And because we're in the past, and I would never fault previous management for decisions they made at the time. But there was a really complicated story with the SaaS and the data and the crypto and the this and the that. And I know how SaaS companies ought to be valued, and I know what we have to deliver to justify a particular kind of valuation. And so if we deliver against that and the market rewards us accordingly, or maybe we get lucky and they give us a little bit more, that I think is one of the key aspects of measuring the performance of any CEO. Now we've had a little bit of volatility. Well, we've actually had a lot of volatility in our stock. If you look at it, we've had what I would characterize as kind of meme action in our stock.
Mm.
And long story short, we wrote the Trump campaign 2020 app, and we like Trump is probably literally the most famous person in the world, and
Yeah,
so
it's
we
tough to
have a lot
argue
of
with.
attention on our stock as a result of that affiliation.
Okay.
Not a bad thing necessarily, but it
Yeah.
also kind of skews and artificially gives us a valuation in the market, which I
Hmm.
don't think is necessarily justified by traditional SaaS measurements of the fundamentals of the business.
Hmm.
So it shouldn't be surprising that we have volatility in the stock because of the speculative nature of some of the purchasers. However, it does give me an objective to go and fill that value. So
Right.
if the market says we're worth this, it's my job to build to that value, right? And
Yeah.
so that's a big part of what we're trying to do.
So I've heard some people complain about being CEOs of publicly traded companies and how the public markets create more scrutiny and just the reporting pressures. Did you always want to run a publicly traded company?
I'm going to give you the headline for your for this
Yeah.
podcast. I'm the accidental public company CEO.
I love it.
And what I mean by that is, I told you earlier about how I was asked to take this role on. And by the way, best job I've ever had. I love what I do. I love being able to lead at this level. I love being able to sell at this level. I love being able to come on to podcasts like this and tell the story. I love to go to investor conferences and tell the story about what we are and what we're trying to accomplish. I love everything about it. But no, I didn't. After I stopped wanting to be an astronaut, I did not, then say I want to become a publicly traded company
Yeah.
CEO. I always knew that I would participate at a higher level than the levels I participated. I'm going to have a CXO kind of jobs pretty consistently for a while now, but I've never had the top job. Now that I have it, I think number one, we're doing a pretty good job on the numbers. Just grading us on the
Mhm.
fundamentals of the business. I also am really enjoying what I'm doing, and I like the idea of being able to have a greater degree of control over the destiny of the company for the benefit of the shareholders.
Mhm.
And there's a lot that needs to get done, but there's also an opportunity for me to ensure that we don't let silly things and shenanigans get in the way of
Mhm.
our ability to execute, which some companies, have trouble with from time to time, whether it's personalities or egos or whatever it is, and we don't do that here. And in that cultural tone that I'm able to set as one of my key responsibilities kind of helps to make sure that we are able just to focus on the work and not focus on the personalities.
So I've got to dig a little deeper on the Trump campaign here. So how did that come about? Was that before your time, or was that when you
I
were?
wasn't here at the time.
Okay.
So I left in 16 and I came back in 23.
Hmm.
In between there, the company actually went public via a SPAC transaction, and had a number of other changes,
Yeah.
along the lines of the folks of the company we talked about a little bit. Um, I candidly don't know how the Trump deal came about in the
Yeah.
first place. I do know that the previous CEO had a relationship with Brad Parscale,
Hmm.
who was, who ran, I'm sorry, oh, whatever his organization was called at the time, and I think he's still doing it. And we established a partnership. The previous administration, and Parscale established a partnership to go and then build out that Trump campaign app. Parscale, I don't think, is involved. At least he tells me he's not involved with the Trump campaign in the same way this time around. But we, certainly have had conversations with Trump about repeating the engagement, and we'll see where those conversations go. Um, you know, as we kind of get into the heat of the campaign season.
Okay. So it sounds, I won't dig too much deeper here, but it sounds like they paid their bills, which is always a question with clients. And
I just don't know.
yeah.
I don't know whether they did or
Okay.
didn't.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to ask a couple other questions that I have as my standard questions for CEOs when I've got on here.
Sure.
Do you have any has since becoming CEO, have you evolved in any way? Are there things that you think differently on now that you didn't, you thought differently on before you became CEO? You grown in any way?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I guess that's for others to judge, but there are a couple of things here. I mean, I'm the same person as I've always been, right? I just try to do a good job. I try to be a straight shooter. I try to deliver results. And I try to, make sure that people have agency and empowerment when they're helping. What I've learned is a lot about the public capital markets. We were in pretty bad shape, frankly, at the end of last year from a financial standpoint, and we had a bunch of stuff that we had to do in the public markets to generate the capital required to really continue and grow. And all of this stuff is publicly disclosed, and you
Mhm.
could go back and read all the filings, et cetera, in terms of the deals that we did. I learned a lot about what it takes to execute in the capital markets. I learned a lot about what I characterize as the pecking order
Mhm.
in terms of what companies in really bad financial shape can expect in terms of their
Mhm.
treatment at the hands of capital investors. But I've also learned that there's with perseverance and the ability to kind of grit your teeth a little bit and to go out and do the right thing for the shareholders, there are ways to get things done. We pulled off what I think is a minor miracle, kind of like a 1 in 100 kind of thing, in terms of being able to recapitalize the company, get out of debt, clean up our balance sheet in a number of different ways, settle some big lawsuits, stuff like that,
Mhm.
all of which has been publicly disclosed. Um, and I learned that it's super duper important to keep an open mind. I didn't want to do some of these deals at all. I thought they were exploitative, to put it nicely. But at the end of the day, a stock that's trading at something more than zero is exactly the right thing to do for the shareholders. So I was able to kind of set aside what I thought was right and fair and really focus on the shareholder who've entrusted us with, some capital. And it's our job to make sure it doesn't go to zero. And then we were absolutely successful in doing that. So long-winded way of saying it's been a bit of a trial by fire. But the kind of the I like to think of myself as a guy who just soberly executes and just I take in the information, I get the counterpoints and various points of view. I synthesize and I act because not acting is a sure way to just stall out and die.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that kind of might answer my next question, which is, what is there something you're most proud of in your initial term here as CEO? Sounds like maybe saving the company to a certain extent.
I mean, there was a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill. I mean, the luck that we got was this Trump related bump in our share price, and our trading volumes were, we were the number one traded stock by share volume on the Nasdaq in the month of January of this year.
Wow.
Billions and
Amazing.
billions of shares traded, right? And in all of that trading frenzy, there are opportunities to monetize that. We did that, right? Along the lines of what I talked about. But what I'll say is that, that association was a little bit of luck, but actually, doing the hard work and taking the hard decisions to do the transactions that we did, which ultimately, I believe, there's a point of view that we saved the company, was the right way to do it. And I have a seasoned finance guy. I've got a seasoned lawyer and deals guy, and we just kind of put our heads together and just did what we thought was right. And we sit here with capital in the bank that we're actually looking to deploy into potential acquisitions that will continue to further, increase shareholder value. So I'm pretty proud of
Yeah.
of having been a part of the team that accomplished that for sure.
I think that's great. This has been a lot of fun. This is really interesting to learn about Funware. Are there any topics that we didn't get to that you think we should go over?
Oh, I'll leave you with a thought or two. And this is maybe just imagine that you're a young person who's thinking about going to business. My daughter is at the Cox School of Business at SMU, and she's in the honors program, and she's going to be focused on marketing. And I think she's going to wind up going to work for a big company in marketing. And I'll give your viewers the same advice that I gave to her. Number one, learn how to sell. You got to learn how to sell. Whether you're going to be a salesperson or not, you got to learn how to sell, because you're always going to be selling your point of view, your ideas. You may or may not be selling like a thing,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, but you're always selling. And there's a right way to sell, and there's an absolutely wrong way to sell. And a way for you to advocate for something that you believe in a way that inspires other people to come along with you is a skill that you will employ every single day in business. Number one. Number two, learn how to engineer prompts. Oh, hang on. I don't know where the balloons came from. Was it that?
I think it was a prompt
Learn
you
how,
just did.
maybe I did.
Yeah.
Learn how to engineer prompts, because you can look at AI. I've got another daughter who's an artist, and she thinks AI is going to steal her art job.
Mm,
And I'm like, no, 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 it's not going to steal your art job. It's another tool. But in the business context, for sure, you can either be afraid of or refuse to accept the reality of AI, or you can embrace it as a tool that you can help to create more leverage and time leverage, frankly, as much as anything else, with the access to all of the information in the world. It's not using AI to help you in your job is a little bit like not using a browser to look information up anymore. And so I tell my daughter, look, you've got to figure out how to be really great at generating prompts for AI. You do those two things. Number one, learn how to sell. Number two, learn how to use tools, including today AI, but tomorrow it's going to be something else, I'm sure.
yeah.
There's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think when it comes to, the next generation coming up, I mean, there's so many unknowns, but I think that sports is really important because sports is something where you can achieve excellence. You can, push yourself to a level of skill that is, that's really remarkable, that has nothing to do with AI. And it can kind of teach you, what that process of growth can be like. And not everybody's going to be a world-class elite athlete, but I think, you against you, pushing yourself to a higher level than you were before. I think that's one of the ways maybe to combat uh some of the challenge I think that young people have, where it's not, you can have an essay generated in of any length generated in the same amount of time it takes to do a good prompt. And I think there is some risk in that, where many people may not go through the effort of writing it out and doing it on their own. especially for ones who would get the better grade by having ChatGPT do it.
Hmm.
And I think combating that is going to be something that is important for their growth. And I think that athletics and extracurriculars like music, things that really where you can still develop yourself in a way that may be undistracted from,
Yep.
from AI. And then you get in, and I think utilizing AI is tremendously powerful when you have that kind
Yep.
of a base. But for people like us who I wouldn't say I'm overeducated, but I mean, maybe I am overeducated. I'm more educated than I need to be. So I guess I'm overeducated. But it was all pre-AI. I think that in some ways we were lucky that we got to go through all that prior to the advent of these types of things, which are in many ways a distraction at the educational level, and then in the business level, they become a tremendous asset.
Yep. Sure enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of my thoughts, and I don't know. You probably characterize that, I suppose, as that discussion as advice for people who are thinking about entering business. I really do believe that we live in the greatest country in the world, and that we
Mhm.
have an enormous amount of opportunity for people who are willing to go and do the work.
Yeah.
And I grew up from humble beginnings, and now I have kind of found myself via a combination of hard work and diligence, and also a little bit of luck, and candidly a little bit of not being afraid enough in the spot where I'm now. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I really believe that.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on Road to CEO. This is great. I think people early in their careers will benefit as well as folks who are more seasoned. So thanks again for joining us, and look forward to staying in touch and sharing the episode with you.
Most appreciated. Thanks so much.